In 2014, when we first started noticing the algal blooms in Hague and Gunflint Lake, I was on the FOCI board at the time, and we initiated a lake monitoring program, and we collected data for a number of years, and then reached out to Ministry of Environment and the BC Lake Stewardship Society to help us to analyze the data and come up with a plan of action of how we could mitigate nutrients that are causing the algal blooms and support the healthy ecosystem in the lakes. At that time, I think it was BC Wildlife Federation put us in touch with Tom Biebighauser, who is a wetland and stream restoration specialist hailing from Kentucky, but does a lot of work in the province.
You just have to walk around, Tom, and you want to turn every agricultural field into a wetland. I was like, stop talking to me. I'll tell you it's okay to do it everywhere. You know, we're on a lake, we're an agricultural farm on a lake, we're a community on a lake, we run an educational center on a lake. There's a lot of activity on the farm. How we can care for the land in a better way was really the important piece for me, like why I felt attracted to the project, and balancing that with the agricultural needs of the farm too, because that also is really important.
The intention and the driving objectives for the project were to reduce nutrients going into the lake, as well as provide habitat for wildlife and species at risk. But there are so many other benefits to restoring wetlands and streams. They clean and store water, they recharge groundwater, they're natural fire breaks. They mitigate flooding and erosion from these intense precipitation events we're seeing in atmospheric rivers. They capture, sequester, and store carbon in the soils and in the vegetation. And they provide water to the landscape and to the animals and to the humans that's clean and safe, and homes for so many species and species at risk. They're sources of life, really. We've lost, you know, in the province, somewhere between like 60 and 80%, or maybe even more, of the wetlands. And globally, it's about the same rate. I mean, they've been drained for agriculture, they've been drained for mining, they've been drained for forestry, and for residential developments and shopping malls, you name it, golf courses. So wherever we have the chance to provide some ecological lift by restoring wetlands and streams, we should take that opportunity. The first field sites that we did for phase 1 were chosen because of their location, really. The access was really quite easy to get in there with equipment. We didn't have to go through the production garden and potentially damage anything down there. And on one side of the laneway, the wetland we built connects to Dillon Creek. And so that wetland is functioning to mitigate nutrients that are being transported by Dillon Creek. On the other side of the laneway, there is another ditch that drains a portion of the field. So that is coming into that side. So Dillon Creek has coastal cutthroat trout who live in the creek and are spawning in there. And so we're now calling that side the fish pond, because the fish do come in, and it's like a little nursery for baby trout. They get in there and there's lots for them to eat. And then on the other side, we're calling it the frog pond. Right before construction, we were laying out the wetlands with pin flags so we could show the operators what the vision was, where would we be digging, where would we be putting soil, figuring out the slopes for the inlets. Yeah, just getting ready to be disturbing the ground with heavy equipment. I
had a full breakdown because I was like, there's machines and it's like beep, beep, dig, dig, dig. And I'm like, what did I say yes to? Like, I fully had a breakdown where I was like, everybody has to stop. I just imagine this tiny little dugout trench. Well, there's a wetland. Look, we can put some birds in it. It'll all be beautiful. But no, it was the whole field. Well, Miranda kept saying to me, she must have been realizing I was kind of losing my mind. But she's like, big machines did this damage, and it's going to take big machines to repair the damage.
The first step is to remove the topsoil and vegetation. Because we were working on a farm, the topsoil is very valuable. We found up to 1 meter in some places of black organic topsoil that we spread on the fields uphill from where the wetlands are. So we removed the topsoil, put it to the side, and then we started digging what's called the core trench. When Dillon Creek was moved and ditched and channeled and put to the side of the valley, that helped to dry the landscape. And the other technique that was used to dry the landscape was the installation of subsurface drainage. They basically work like the drain in a bathtub, and they just drain all the water down and off into the ditch. So the core trench is a technique where we dig with the excavator along the lower 2/3 of the wetland, and we locate those drains, we disable them, we remove them, and then we repack the trench we've dug with a soil that's high in clay. So we kind of make a wedge along the bottom. So it interrupts the flow of water underground. From there, we're moving up the slope and excavating the basin, and then roughing and loosening the soil. As the rain falls and the water falls on to these rough and loose soils, because they're loose, it's easy for the water to infiltrate and percolate through the soils. So they prevent erosion. They also create all these little micro sites for seeds to land and then germinate. They also allow the newly establishing plants, whether they're planted vegetation or self-seeded from the surrounding forest, it gives those plants a place for the roots to easily penetrate into the soil and become reestablished. We placed a lot of coarse woody debris in and around the wetlands, and in the water, the coarse woody debris, especially the fine branches in the first year, are super critical because they provide the egg attachment sites for dragonfly eggs and as well for amphibian eggs. The final step in this case was to build the inlet, and the inlet is where it connects to Dillon Creek. The creek was restricted in this tiny channel, and when it's really flowing with a big rain event, the water has no place to go but to push against the sides of the channel, and that's what scours the edges of the channel and creates all of this erosion and sediment transport. So in this area where the inlet is, we lower the elevation of the banks to give the stream a place to flow and to give it access to its floodplain, which has been restricted from. On the wildlife cams, we've seen deer, lots of deer.
Okay.
And geese, and raccoon has been coming and washing in the water.
Ah, cute.
Yeah, yeah. And
Koalas.
Is that raccoon? Yeah, koala. Long before construction and when we were still in the planning phases, we reached out to Klahoose First Nation to get their approval for the project, and also to ask if and how they'd like to be engaged in the project. And Jessie, Louie came out to the project site and we had a walk around.
Going through the wetlands was a very interesting lot of work that's been done. Because everything is slowly disappearing. Like my dad used to say, look around. What you'd uktam thosam. He said, everything's gonna be gone. Look around. He said he could see it. which was coming. And sure enough, today it's happening. And that was how many years ago? You're looking at 40-some years ago when he said, you know, by goodness, always watch. Matu Thomas, Kochu Kajina, you know, take what you need, but put back. That's what he said to me.
Jessie spoke a lot about the plants and shared stories of how she uses the plants, how she remembers her parents or grandparents using the plants, and that really influenced our plant selection on what we would plant there. Plants like spruce and Labrador tea and thimbleberries and some other berries.
Dad used to build a out of lard cans that we used to have way back in the day. We used to have lard in cans before.
Okay.
And so Dad would make little holes in them and put a rag or something over it and put it around our neck so that way we'd be able to pick berries.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how he used to do it for us. Or that when Mom did chuhum, the huckleberries, he built a box kind of. I don't know how it was, but he built a kind of a box where Mom could just shake the berries on it.
Jessie mentioned, having Ayajutham language for a sign. So we worked with her over a number of sessions to get the correct spelling of all the words, and we put it on the sign, the informational sign that we put out there.
Keeping our language alive is very, very important. And the only way anything survives if you keep it going. If you keep on replenishing it, if you keep on feeding it, if you keep on speaking it. Blackcaps, mathok. Indian tea, kwapani. Elderberry, folk. Shillelberry, daka. Strawberry, Hagen. Blueberry, Pok. Blackberry, Chituhun. Huckleberry, Tuhum. Salmonberry, Danok. And the shoots for salmonberry is Paaja. And thimbleberry, Tokom. And water, Kaya. Lake is Fayas. Creek is Kwakwata. Deer, Kegas. And ducks, Kwakwak. Beaver, Kowat. Wolf, Frog. And then tree, Jeja. Alder, Pikai. Crab apples, Kwan. Wild rosehip, Kagan, and the red cedar is Tahamai.
That's one of the things we look for when we're looking at landscapes to tell if they've been drained or affected or if they could be restored into wetlands. Like if we see those big cedar stumps, then we know that this place was had moisture, was a wetland. So cedar really grow in swamps.
Just talking about that, I remember my dad before he passed, he said he was trying to find a tree, a cedar tree big enough to build a dugout, but they're all gone. He said there's none else around, he was saying. Working
to reverse some of the damages that have been done to the landscape, to try and restore hydrology and watershed function and ecosystem connectivity, and provide habitat for wildlife, and provide a place for culturally important plants to grow, and to be working with an elder to accomplish this work. It's a small step towards reconciling our own relationships as settlers. So many of the projects that we're working on, it seems like we're repairing the damages from 100 years ago or 50 years ago. And it's shocking how much damage has been done.
What's happening out there with the climate change is so severe right now, and how much longer anything's going to last, we don't know. You're looking at the wetlands and what it has to offer, and will continue to offer. And that's quite a lot. How important it is which is always important, is to replenish with everything that we use. So we always have to give an offering. If we use a cedar, we always put tobacco underneath the cedar tree. Everything has a purpose, and that would go for everything that's in the wetlands, no matter what it could be that's out there. It's of some use.
I love that you use the word replenish, talking about the work that we've done there. The word I usually use is restore, but replenish, it kind of has more of like a life-giving quality to it. You know, it's like filling it back up rather than just repairing. So I really like that. You know, we've had a lot of community engagement with this project. We've had so many volunteers come out to help with seeding and mulching and revegetation and invasive species management.
I mean, that's kind of what Linnaea is it brings people together around land-based activities. So that's been a really beautiful thing.
Right after construction, we seeded first with a native sedge and rush seed collection that we collected locally from 2 wetlands that are very close to the Dillon Creek site. So some volunteers went out with myself and Autumn, our monitoring technician, and we just, hand-picked seeds from these native wetland plants. That rough and loose soil is ready to make this perfect little nest for the seeds. And then we spread winter rye as erosion and weed control, and we also mulched with straw to hold the moisture in and prevent erosion, and also help in suppressing weeds and invasive plants from coming in. And then in September, we had an amazing volunteer event. I think we had something like 20 or 30 people come out to help plant. We had just over 300 plants, over 20 different species of shrubs and trees, and some aquatics as well. And we planted them around the wetland. At the end of the day, a few of us were left. We were still just kind of cleaning up tools. And all of a sudden, somebody said, "It's coming in!"
Oh my God! Wow, that's really coming in! It would have been a lot worse if this wasn't here. Yeah, pretty crazy. We're just standing.
We're going to take a marker to see how fast it fills up.
Yeah. I know, because that... And this is a lot.
Until that time, we hadn't seen Dillon Creek actually come over into the wetland. It was like a huge river of this brown, muddy water. And it was so exciting for me because I had the opportunity to be there when it was flooding and see how the inlet functioned and see how the spillway functioned, and got to be there as the water was moving through the wetland for the very first time.
That is seriously intense.
This year has been amazing to see how much wildlife is already in the wetlands. Right after we built the wetlands, the dragonflies started coming in right away. And the invertebrates, it's amazing. Like we're seeing back swimmers and water beetles and mayfly larvae and caddisfly larvae and dragonfly larvae and water scorpions and so many tadpoles and frog eggs. And it's amazing. We've had hooded mergansers, we've had eagles, we've had mallard groups, and just recently, a few days ago, we saw a muskrat has moved in to one of the wetlands. In 5 or 10 years, once the trees and the shrubs and the riparian vegetation have grown up, that offers really important habitat for all of those creatures who want to be spending more time in the wetlands. The other major thing we've been noticing is what I call the sediment island that's being deposited in the inlet as the fast-moving water from the Dillon Creek is meeting the slow, still water of the wetland. It deposits all those sediments and particles that it's been carrying. So when I've kind of tried to estimate and quantify how much has been deposited in the wetland from the creek, what I get is about 8 tandem-sized dump truck loads of material. So that tells us a couple things. It tells us, one, the wetlands are functioning as intended to remove sediments and nutrients before they go into the lake. And 2, it also tells us that there is a pretty major erosional issue happening upstream. I hope that this work can continue because we're seeing so much soil coming from upstream. You know, it tells me there's work to be done in this watershed. I encourage people whenever they can to protect and maintain wet areas, even though it might mean less usable space on your property. The benefit to the climate, the benefit to the ecology, the benefit to wildlife is so valuable. Just creating ditches that aren't quite as deep can be really effective, or making sure your ditches are vegetated. If you have a shallow ditch that will still function to move the water as you need away from your structures and your infrastructure, but it's planted with sedges and cattails and willows, that will filter any of the nutrients that are being transported in the runoff going down the ditch. We can think of ditches less as ditches and more of bioswales or rain gardens, where we can be supporting wildlife, cleaning and filtering the water rather than just letting it run off. At this time of a global climate crisis, we need to be working full tilt to restore ecosystems wherever we can, to provide climate change adaptation resilience for ourselves and for future generations. Wetland and stream restoration projects are happening all over the place, across the province. And if people are eager to be involved in doing this work, I really encourage them to reach out, either to me or to any local organization that's doing this work, because there is a lot of opportunity to be working in restoring the ecology of our home, of our planet.